The porch was soaked in red. Not paint, not wine. Blood, thick and bright, pooling beneath her head. My knees hit the concrete before I realized I had even moved. Her name ripped out of my throat, but she didn't flinch. She couldn't. Her eyes stared past me, past the world, locked in some silent space I couldn't reach. My daughter was bleeding out, and she didn't even know it. She didn't hear the bullet. She didn't hear the scream. She didn't hear me begging her to hold on. Because my daughter is deaf, and someone pulled the trigger just because she didn't respond fast enough. I remember her drawing in chalk an hour earlier. Carefree, innocent, sketching suns and stars on the sidewalk. Her world was quiet, but it was beautiful. I had just gone inside to answer a call. 1 minute. That's all it took. 1 minute for a neighbor, one woman, full of rules and rage, to think my child was a threat. She claimed she shouted warnings. That my daughter ignored her. That she felt unsafe. So she fired. She fired a bullet into my little girl's head like she was defending her property, not murdering a child who never even heard her coming. I screamed. I screamed so loud the neighborhood shook. But still, she didn't hear me. The flashing lights, the sirens, the gurney, the blood, the silence. That unbearable, endless silence. The kind only a parent knows when they fear they've lost everything. The kind only I know because I raised a child in a world that refuses to understand her. But this isn't just a story about grief. It's about fear, about ignorance, about what happens when people choose violence over compassion, when a homeowners association rulebook becomes more important than a human life. You want to know how we got here? Let me take you back. We moved into that neighborhood because I thought it was safe. Quiet streets, manicured lawns, kids on scooters, birds chirping in the morning. Everything looked perfect, almost sterile. But as a single dad raising a deaf daughter, I was just grateful for a place that didn't reek of sirens or stairs. We had bounced around before, apartment to apartment, trying to find a place where she could grow without being labeled, where she could be her. Her name is Alara. She's 10, loves coloring book fairies and hummingbirds. Even though she can't hear a thing, she says she feels when something is beautiful. She smiles with her whole face, especially when she senses sunlight on her skin. I remember the first time she signed the word home after we unpacked. She took my hand, squeezed it, and made the gesture. It was small, simple, but I almost cried. Our house was on the corner, just across from the HOA president's place. That was Karen. I remember her first words to us weren't hello or welcome. They were just so. You know, we take rules very seriously here. She pointed at the height of my grass and handed me a printout. HOA bylaws, Section 14, Paragraph 6. No chalk drawings on the sidewalk. No street play. No unsightly clutter. Ilara's art counted as clutter, apparently. I smiled politely. She didn't, but I let it go. Maybe she was just particular. We settled in. I taught Ilara how to wave at neighbors, how to show her alert bracelet. She had a bright pink charm bracelet that said, "I am deaf in 3 languages." I told her to always wear it outside. She did, religiously. Every Saturday morning, she'd be on the porch with her colored chalks, drawing dragons, suns, or what she imagined music looked like. She couldn't hear the songs I played on the speakers, but she'd bounce like she could feel the beat. It was her world. Safe, gentle, hers. But not everyone saw it that way. Within the first month, we got 3 notices from the HOA. 1 for sidewalk drawings, 1 for unresponsive behavior, 1 for visible loitering of a minor. They were talking about my daughter. Karen had filed every single one. At first, I tried to reason with her, explained that Alara wasn't ignoring anyone, she just couldn't hear them. I even showed her Alara's ID card, her diagnosis, even offered to have her meet Alara in a quiet setting. Her response? I don't have time for special cases. If she can't follow rules, she shouldn't be outside alone. That night, I stared at our ceiling fan for hours, wondering if I had made the wrong decision moving here. But Ilara, she didn't notice any of it. She still ran barefoot through the grass. She still giggled, without sound. She still believed the world was full of kindness. She was still drawing hope onto concrete every morning, unaware that someone next door was watching her with disgust in her eyes. Looking back, I should have taken the signs more seriously. But how could I have known that one day the thing Karen hated the most would be the reason she pulled the trigger? It started with whispers, not words spoken to my face, but the kind of glances you feel before you see them. Neighbors began pulling their kids inside when Alara played in the front yard. One woman crossed the street, tugging her toddler along as if my daughter were contagious. Another left a note in our mailbox: teach your kid to respond. It's dangerous and rude. The walls of that quiet suburb were tightening, and Karen, she wasn't letting up. A week later, I came home to find Alara sitting on the steps, arms folded tight around her legs. She looked up at me and signed. Did I do something wrong? There was a violation slip stuck to the door. Unauthorized, unsupervised minor activity. I held the paper in my fist until it crumpled. That night, I wrote a letter to the HOA attaching medical proof of Valera's condition. I explained again that she had every right to be outside, that her bracelet identified her clearly, and that we followed every safety protocol. I even offered to host a Disability Awareness Day in the community center. The response? While we sympathize with your situation, we must apply the rules equally. Please supervise your child at all times. Karen didn't want understanding. She wanted silence, compliance. But Alara wasn't the problem. Karen's world didn't make room for anything unfamiliar, especially a child who didn't respond to her voice. And then came the police. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was folding laundry when the knock came, sharp, aggressive. I opened the door to two officers, hands on their belts. Karen had reported a suspicious child lingering near her driveway. My child, coloring with chalk, 10 feet from our mailbox. They asked questions, took notes. One even smiled awkwardly and whispered, "She doesn't seem like a threat at all, sir. Sorry about this." I nodded, but something inside me cracked. This wasn't just harassment. It was a campaign. I installed a camera on the porch the next day. That week, it recorded Karen walking by, pausing to glare at Alara's chalk sketches, shaking her head like she was watching a crime scene. She muttered something under her breath. I zoomed in on the footage later. This is what happens when people don't discipline their kids. I didn't show Alara the video, but she was changing too. She stopped using her chalks. She stopped smiling at neighbors. One morning, she handed me the bracelet she always wore and signed, "They still don't look at it. What's the point?" I held back tears and told her the point was to never stop being who she was. But inside, I was crumbling. I couldn't protect her from something I couldn't touch, fear masked as rules, hate masked as policy. And then the package came. No return address. Just a manila envelope with bold black letters across the front. Final warning: immediate compliance required. Inside were printouts of HOA bylaws, more evidence of violations, including photos of Alara from across the street. It was chilling. The angles, the timing. Someone had been watching her, documenting her. My hands trembled. I confronted Karen the same day. She stood on her porch with arms crossed, sipping iced tea, like nothing in the world could touch her. "You're accusing me of what exactly?" she said, not even blinking. "I want you to leave my daughter alone," I said. "Then control her," she replied, stepping back inside. That night, I locked every door twice. I didn't sleep. Alara had nightmares, silent ones. I only knew because I'd find her curled up on the floor beside my bed in the mornings. She didn't want to be alone anymore, and neither did I. I filed a formal complaint. The HOA dismissed it. I reached out to a local disability rights attorney. He promised to look into it, but we were running out of time. Because a few days later, Karen bought a gun. She posted it on her neighborhood bulletin board with a smug caption, "Finally exercising my Second Amendment rights. Tired of feeling unsafe on my own block." The post got 23 likes. No one questioned what she meant. No one asked who she felt unsafe around. But I knew, and I should have left right then. Packed everything. Vanished. But where would we go? Where was safety when injustice followed you behind white picket fences? I didn't know it yet, but the countdown had already started. And the next time someone rang our doorbell, it wouldn't be a neighbor. It would be a bullet. It was a Tuesday, sunny but heavy. The kind of day where everything looks normal, but your bones feel wrong. I don't know how to explain it better than that. Ilara was drawing again. After nearly a week of silent mornings, she had picked up her chalks, timidly tracing soft shapes on the porch. I remember peeking out the window and thinking, maybe she's healing. Maybe we all were. That hope didn't last long. Around noon, a car pulled into the driveway next door. Karen stepped out, talking loudly on her phone. Even from inside, I could tell she was agitated. She paced. She pointed across the street at our house, at Ilara. She didn't know I was watching. A few minutes later, I heard something hit the front door. I rushed out. It was an egg, splattered across the wood, dripping slowly like a grotesque painting. A note was taped above it, flapping in the breeze. We warned you. Next time it won't be so soft. I scanned the street. No one in sight. Just quiet homes and Karen's silhouette retreating into her living room. That was the final straw. I called the police again. This time, I demanded to file a report for harassment and threats. The officer was polite, took photos, nodded a lot. But I could see it in his face, this is a neighborhood dispute, not our priority. I asked for a restraining order. He sighed. There's no direct evidence of intent to harm, sir. And no witnesses. No witnesses. Except the chalk lines on the concrete. The crumpled bracelet. The fear in my daughter's eyes. That night, Ilara wouldn't sleep in her room. She asked if she could stay in mine. I tucked her in beside me, her small frame curled like she was trying to disappear into the mattress. She clung to her sketch pad, the one place she still felt control. On the cover, she had drawn a house with no windows and no doors, just walls. Even in her art, she was hiding. 2 days later, Karen made her final move. I came home from work a little late. Ilara was on the porch, drawing again. She had made progress, a bird with wide wings and a house with an open window. I smiled, relieved. Maybe she felt safer being visible again. And then the doorbell rang. It was a single ding, but it split the air like a blade. I walked toward the door, but before I could open it, I heard it. A sound I'll never forget. Not the shot, not even the scream, just a thud. A wet, sickening thud. Then silence. I ran outside barefoot. The chalk drawings were smeared with red. Ilara was on the ground, her head tilted, eyes wide open, frozen in time. Blood was blooming beneath her. Not fast, but constant. A neighbor was already on the phone with 911, her voice shaking. Karen stood 10 feet away, arms locked, a pistol dangling from her hand. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't crying. She was explaining. I shouted at her. She wouldn't respond. She was standing near my mailbox again. I thought she was going to do something. I collapsed beside Ilara, pressing anything I could against the wound. My hands, my shirt, my soul. She can't hear. I screamed. She never could. The paramedics came fast. Everything else moved in slow motion. A gurney, a stretcher, lights. Ilara's sketchpad left behind in the chaos. They rushed her to the trauma center. I wasn't allowed in the ambulance. I followed behind, speeding, screaming, praying. That night, the waiting room smelled like bleach and despair. Doctors spoke in hushed tones. Nurses avoided eye contact. A social worker asked me if I had other family. I asked her if my daughter would survive. She didn't answer. Meanwhile, Karen was being interviewed, not arrested, not handcuffed. Interviewed like she had fired a warning shot and missed. But she hadn't missed. She had hit the very soul of my life. I sat outside the ICU for what felt like years. The hallway lights buzzed faintly above me, humming like a cruel lullaby. Every time footsteps approached, I braced myself, either for hope or for the end of my world. Neither came. Just waiting. Just silence. They finally let me in around midnight. Ilara looked so small beneath the machines. Wires tangled across her chest. A respirator hissed in rhythm with her broken breath. Her forehead was wrapped tight, the blood washed away, but I could still see where it had been, where the bullet had entered, grazed across her skull, and shattered everything in its path. They said she was lucky. Lucky? The word made me nauseous. They said the bullet had glanced off her skull, an angle a miracle. She was alive, but they didn't know if she'd wake up. And if she did, what would be left? I sat beside her, held her hand, and whispered every story I had ever told her. I knew she couldn't hear even now, but I kept signing with my free hand, kept moving my fingers like a prayer. Please come back. Please come back to me. Every few hours, nurses would check her vitals, give me soft looks, and slip away. No one said her name. No one said justice. Meanwhile, on the news, they were calling it a tragic misunderstanding. Karen had told the police she felt threatened. She had given a verbal warning. Claimed Alara ignored her and moved toward her property aggressively. There were no witnesses to contradict her. No one to say my 10-year-old daughter was coloring a sunbeam onto concrete. And so she walked free, armed, justified, untouched. I screamed that night, in the hospital bathroom, into my fists, into the mirror. I smashed the soap dispenser off the wall, collapsed to the floor. My body shook so violently I thought my own bones might crack. I couldn't understand how the world kept spinning, how cars still honked, how clocks still ticked, how my daughter lay between life and death, while the woman who pulled the trigger slept peacefully in her suburban home. I stayed by Alara's side for 3 straight days. I didn't eat, barely drunk. I just stared at her chest, counting each rise like it was a treasure. The doctors tried to prepare me. Brain trauma is unpredictable. They said, she may have memory loss. She may not respond the same way. She may never draw again. Draw again? She might never smile again. On the 4th day, her fingers twitched. Just once. Barely. But I saw it. I jumped up, calling the nurse, signing and speaking at the same time, my hands frantic, heart hammering. Then her eyelids fluttered. Slow. Fragile. Like a curtain in the wind. And then she blinked. Her eyes were unfocused. Heavy. But they opened. I signed her name slowly. Alara. It's me. I'm here. Tears spilled from her eyes. She tried to lift her hand. It shook, but she reached for me. Her fingers brushed my wrist. I broke. I wept into her sheets, kissing her fingers, thanking God, thanking fate, thanking whatever force spared her. But she didn't smile. Her eyes stayed wide, confused, hollow. She signed something. Sloppily. Weak. What did I do wrong? I couldn't answer. Because she hadn't done anything wrong. The world had. The world that couldn't tolerate difference. The world that thought silence was defiance. The world that gave a woman the right to fire a bullet at a child because she didn't move fast enough, or flinch, or hear. That night, I sat with Alara under the dim hospital light and promised her, I won't let them forget you. I won't let them call you a footnote or an accident. You're not just a headline. You're the storm. We left the hospital with more scars than stitches. Alara couldn't walk without support for the first few weeks. Her balance was off, inner ear damage, they said, but it wasn't just physical. It was as if something behind her eyes had dimmed. Like the light was still there, but it flickered behind fear. Her drawing stopped. She didn't even pick up a pencil. The chalks we brought home stayed untouched. She slept beside me for a month. Every soundless nightmare brought her back to the same memory. Colors turning red, then everything fading to black. Karen never apologized. Instead, she moved, quietly. No charges were filed. The official record read, no criminal intent. Acted in perceived self-defense. Case closed. That line haunted me more than the sound of the gunshot. Perceived self-defense. Against a child who couldn't hear. Against a child who held chalk, not a weapon. We try to go back to normal, but what does normal mean when the world tries to erase your child's existence? I pulled Alara from school and started homeschooling her. She couldn't be around crowds anymore. Not yet. Maybe not ever. People sent letters. Some kind. some cruel. One envelope had no return address, just a typed note that said, "Should have taught her to listen." I burned it. I wanted justice. I filed civil suits. I contacted advocacy groups. I posted our story online. Carefully, honestly, painfully, I showed the chalk drawings, the blood, the truth. The story went viral. At first, I hesitated. I didn't want Alara turned into a symbol. But then I saw the messages from other parents of deaf children, people who had faced violence, discrimination, humiliation. People who had been told to control their kids, to fix them, to keep them inside. We were not alone. So I kept speaking. I gave interviews. I stood on courtroom steps and told the world what it meant to raise a daughter who lives in silence, and how society punishes her for it. Ilara watched some of the videos. She never said anything, just watched. Then one day, she picked up a pencil. She drew two houses side by side. One had no windows. The other had an open door and sun pouring through it. Between them, a girl stood holding a megaphone, not to make noise but to show a sign. "I see you." That was Ilara's message. And maybe that's what we all want, to be seen even when we don't speak the same way, to be understood even if we exist in a world without sound. Healing isn't linear. Some days, she still flinches when the doorbell rings. Some nights, she still signs, "Am I safe?" in the dark. But she draws again. And when I see those colors filling the pages, I know she's still here, not just alive, but rising. People think stories end when justice is served, or when the villain is punished, or when the victim survives. But the truth is, real stories don't end. They echo. What happened to Alara wasn't just one woman's hatred or fear. It was a reflection of a system that equates unfamiliarity with danger. A culture that treats disability as defiance, that assumes silence means disobedience, that allows a gun to speak louder than empathy. We didn't get a courtroom verdict. We didn't get an apology. But we did get something else. We got heard. Today, Ilara helps me speak at schools and community centers, not with her voice, but with her presence. Her drawings are now part of a traveling exhibit called Color Beyond Sound. One of her pieces, her favorite, is titled, "I Saw the Bullet Before I Heard the World." She still can't hear a single note of music, but she's learned to make the world listen without sound. As for me, I'm no longer just a father. I'm an advocate, a fighter, a reminder that the next time someone judges a child for not responding properly, they remember this story. They remember the chalk, the bracelet, the silence, and the price we almost paid for someone else's ignorance. So, if you're watching this and you've ever felt unseen, misunderstood, alone in your difference, let me say this clearly: you don't have to be loud to be powerful. You don't have to speak to matter. And you don't have to hear to be heard. Ilara taught me that. And I hope, somehow, she's taught you too. If this story moved you, if it made you feel, even for a moment, the weight of what too many families live through every day, then don't let it end here. Backhand index pointing right, share this video with someone who needs to understand that silence is not ignorance and difference is not danger. Brain, speak up for those who can't be heard. Bell, subscribe to the HOA Stories for more real, powerful, and heart-wrenching stories of families navigating injustice, ignorance, and survival behind the perfect fences and manicured lawns. Because behind every HOA, there's a story they don't want told. You deserve to hear it.